People are gonna...
We are live. Well, we're not actually starting right now, but anyway.
It's always better when we start just casually.
Yeah, I love it like
it's
that.
nice.
Oh, did you listen to the episode?
Which
Which
one?
one?
Well, the last episode when you were asking him about the toilet.
Oh, at the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, the taking a dump?
Yeah,
Bro, that was
let's
actually
not
really
start the
funny.
same
I
way.
left that in.
That was
Yeah, I
really-
know you did.
Did you leave it in? Bro, it's actually pretty funny. But bro, do you remember at the beginning, like honestly, like now we can talk about it, we can have a laugh about it now. Because when we started out and like, welcome, the Dropouts.
Yeah,
I don't know,
100%.
bro, that made me sick.
I feel like slowly but surely we've gotten better at certain aspects. Still a lot of improving to do, but that's the fun thing about starting, something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, can hear a bit better.
Maddie just turned me down. I
Yeah.
tried to tell
And you know
myself
what?
back
But
up.
even after 13 weeks, I still can't get over this rich audio when I can just hear your voice.
Bro, do you remember the first time when I picked up the mic?
I know.
Bro,
Yeah.
there's something
freaked
so
out.
novel about the way this sounds.
Literally.
Don't you think?
It doesn't take
100%.
much to entertain
Sorry.
JP as well, bro. Like he's like,
There's a flicker of light.
literally, he's like one of those like little
Do
puppies
you
that
know
gets
when I
excited.
was- Do you know I was working at LinkedIn? Did you guys know I worked at LinkedIn?
Oh my god!
Wait, tell us the story. Tell us
Do
the
you know when
story.
I worked there? They used to when I was really early on when I was working there. I was like, your age.
Where were we working?
Yeah. What's it called?
LinkedIn, LinkedIn.
Okay.
And they used to. One of the managers started calling me Pup, like because I was like
Yeah,
a little
'cause
Jack
you're
Russell.
little Jack
nickname
You're
everyone's
little,
heels.
like excited little, little.
Yeah, over nothing.
Yeah, literally.
Just say what you want. Tell me what you want to say.
But episode 13. This is an interesting one. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this one. That's my chamomile tea.
Oh, that's nice. I never have chamomile. Always have black tea.
This is your house, so you should know. But
Yeah,
we're talking
it's
about
my
mental
tea.
health today. So quite
Yeah.
a touchy subject. Quite. I think
big subject.
A big subject.
Big subject.
A lot of
Huge.
people can probably relate to this. I think a lot of people have at least known one person that has experienced that in their, immediate family or friend group,
Yeah.
or maybe even yourself if you're listening to this episode. So we're going to touch on all bases: depression, anxiety, stress, which teeters onto mental health, and just shed a little bit of insight on your anecdotes and your personal experiences. But
just remembering that we're not experts here.
Definitely
in
not.
this field.
Yeah.
It's just more so from our own perspective.
Correct.
And what we've sort of potentially gone through and seen as well. And so,
Yeah, that's it. Like
yeah.
we don't, and that's the thing. I mean, the whole idea of this is that we don't necessarily have to be experts, but we can just come in and give
Share our
our
insight.
thoughts on the topic, create some healthy dialogue.
Again,
Yeah.
and one of the things we've been trying to, I guess, circle back to on the podcast is the reason why we started is because we're not experts. We're dropouts. We none of us actually graduated from that depth of field. Doesn't mean that I don't think we can offer some insight, some experience, and some valuable knowledge.
Yeah.
But
Some
definitely not experts by any means. But just to kick it off, I mean. Shout out ChatGPT because it does a lot of the stats for you. But I do have a lot of stats. We put in a couple of good prompts just to, I guess, kick off on some facts. So they think globally is estimated that 1 in 4 people would experience a mental health disorder at some point in their lives. I think it's hard to break that down even further, but there's some interesting facts.
Yeah.
Depression and anxiety, one of the most prevalent mental health disorders affecting over 264 million people worldwide. So what's
Wow.
the population of
Wow,
7
bro.
billion?
7 billion, 8 billion, something like that.
Wow.
bro.
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
bro. That is a lot
Bro,
of people.
that's
bro.
huge.
That is
7
a-
billion in the world. So that's, I don't know what that's.
Let's do some
but
quick
that's a
maths.
lot.
Yeah, it's a
It's
lot.
a lot.
It is a lot.
It's huge.
This one actually was really concerning. So suicide is a major health concern. Over 800,000 people annually die of suicide. You know what I
Far
mean?
out.
And
Worldwide?
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
Annually.
Making it one of the leading causes of death.
Isn't that sad?
That's so
Very
sad.
sad.
Bro.
And
And it's hard to understand, right? Like you just don't understand that whole
What could
perspective of it.
bring someone to the
could bring-
point?
Yeah,
Bro,
Yeah.
look,
and it's easy to judge, but it's hard, it's also hard to as well. Like you just like what you don't know. Like, you're not too,
bro, that's always been like a messed up one. I think we'll get onto that. I think we need to start and go into, if the conversation does steer into suicide, but that's
That's heavy.
That's a spiritual
heavy.
thing, bro. Like to be able to actually to take your own life is very confronting. And if anyone's experienced that in their friendship group, I know I've experienced that at a distance from people that I've sort of known, not on a personal level, but through mutual friends. There was a kid at school that passed of suicide. And I remember the next day it was like very, very black at our school the next day. And man. So thoughts and we're just gonna teeter around this subject and share our insights. But Sean, kick us off, mate. What's your take on depression, anxiety, mental health as it stands?
Yeah, for me, like I don't really understand it too much because obviously I haven't experienced that. I haven't experienced depression. I haven't really experienced anxiety at a high
Yes.
level. and even stress to an extent. But from what I've seen, my mother had depression for about 10 years, from when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and that was on the back of her marriage with my father, or whatever happened through that, and then her leaving my sister and myself and moving to Australia because we lived in New Zealand. And she would always, again, I don't want to go into too much detail because it's her story, but I'll share a little bit. But she would always share with me that at that point in time, she would just feel very numb, like not even have any feelings towards being away from me and my sister. And she's actually only told me that recently. Whereas my sister and I would also always go and visit her, which was a great thing, especially at that age. We'll go on for holidays and those sorts of things, and we'll talk on the phone and send letters and all these sorts of things like that. But yeah, she would say, I just didn't feel anything. I didn't even have a feeling towards you and your sister.
Wow.
And that was a time when depression wasn't very prevalent, right? No one really knew too much about it. There wasn't Black Dog, there wasn't Beyond Blue, there wasn't social media where you would talk about it and really be open to it. So I remember sort of going and seeing my mum, and I had no idea. I had no idea what it was. Obviously, I was a young kid, but I remember going there, and at some points in time, she would always be in bed. Right?
Yeah.
So she would always be in bed. Like, we'd wake up, we'd have breakfast, and she'll go back to bed, and we'll be watching TV, and she'll drop us off at the movie, she'll go home, she'll go back to bed, right? So again, at that time I didn't understand it. Even now I don't really understand it, and that's sort of something that I'm talking to my mum about now. I said to her actually a couple of weeks ago, I said, I'd love to know, like, what was that like? Like, what did that feel like? What was that whole process? And that's when we sort of started talking about her, and how she felt about the situation that she was in, and feeling numb, and that's where sort of we kicked it off. So yeah, I'm actually really excited for her to be able to tell her story to me about that.
And she's broke through to the other side now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was a long time ago. That was probably 20, 25 years ago.
Wow.
And I believe it was about 10 years she went through that. Went to psychotherapy, went to psychologists, and all these types of things. So she had a really hard time through that.
Wow.
Through that time. And again, for me, I'm not too sure because I haven't gone through those things before. I will talk about this a little bit later, but I've had clients that have had depression that have actually come off having to have tablets and medication for that due to being able to exercise and being in a great community. But again, and getting that insight from my mum will be awesome to be able to
So she battled through that, obviously, and now you're saying that was quite a long time ago, but did she shed some light on, what was ding, 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 catalyst for change or something that changed? I know she's a woman of faith. She's a Christian, is she?
Yeah, she is big time. So she and she was. Well, we were like growing up. We were, but yeah, I think that was something big that sort of drew her away from that.
Right.
Again, I got to talk to her a little bit more in depth about it, and whether going and seeing professionals.
Objection, Your Honour. Leading question.
No, I'd just like to, because this is super interesting for me because I know a lot of people either go down like psychologist route, but sometimes, like my brother personally, he was battling with depression and was seeing a psychologist for like a number of times, and a number of years, I should say. And then it got to a point where I've spoken to a lot of people who have dealt with depression, anxiety, other mental health disorders, where they've gone and seen a psych, and it's just gotten to the point where they're like, I can't shed any more insight on what it is. Go search within. Like a lot of them get to the point where it's like there's no medical advice where you can give, where it ends up just being like, okay, you're gonna have to
more
turn
like
to spirituality,
inner purpose or something, or inner purpose, or moving towards a different direction.
Correct.
The thing that I found, and I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, when it comes to, and it's funny because I was speaking to a mate of mine who's doing coaching and psych, and he wanted to do some kind of like practice coaching sessions. And what I found was that it was just an interesting experience because the whole process and what he was going through with me was very much looking so inward and focusing so much on self. But what I found was that like, and I've never like drawn a comparison for me personally between like prayer and like a spiritual life, whatever that may be. I've never drawn a comparison between that and fuck. There goes the set. Oh, we're still live. Maddie just knocked over the whole podcast set. What was I talking about? Disneyland? I forgot. No, hold on. We're just setting back up, guys.
Sorry, we just had some technical difficulties.
Are we on? We're good? We're good. All
Yeah,
right,
we're good.
so-
Yeah. So back to
So what I was saying was, what I found interesting was that there was a lot of like looking inward. But what I always found, why I personally had always found that like, you know, when I'm having a shit time, why prayer was my refuge was that I wasn't at all focusing on myself. I was literally dumping all the shit that I had on someone else.
Yeah.
Like, and that was a liberating feeling. Whereas looking inward was almost like it felt heavier.
Yeah.
Like it felt like, oh, I'm looking at me, what's going on with me, talk about, and I'm like, no, well, I'd rather just, I don't know. It's a weird thing, man. Like I just feel like when I do get to that point where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do, here, man. Like I'm done. I can't do anything. I'm so powerless.
Surrender.
And I literally surrender. That feeling of surrender is the relief.
Because all of a sudden you're not in control. And I think that's why a lot of people who deal with depression maybe is like, it was what it stems from is there's always this understanding of who they are based on things that they've done, you know, a title that they've had, a job that they've had, an amount of money they make, the possessions. And you hear a lot of people, I would love to know the statistic exactly because I don't want to go and misquote it. But my uncle's friend is a life coach and he deals with some very, very successful people all over the world. And he, like, when we sat down and had dinner, he was like, you'll be surprised at how unfulfilled and depressed a lot of these so-called billionaires or millionaires or gurus are, bro. Like, you know, you come to the end of yourself, you're like, wow, I've finally achieved what I thought I would, you know, want to. And then it's like that Paulo Coelho book we always talk about. It's like, you know, it's the journey, not the destination. And it's like
The Alchemist.
Yeah,
Wow.
The Alchemist.
Yeah.
Like,
What a
bro,
beautiful-
what a book.
but it's also about a higher purpose in them just actually going and making money.
Correct.
Or growing this business, right? Like
100%.
in the whole concept of contribution. Like,
Yes.
are they actively contributing to something outside of themselves, or are they just contributing to what they want and where they want to go?
Yeah,
So
right.
I think that's a big one as well. And yeah, and definitely they talk about that in quite a few books in terms of what are these guys moving towards, or you know, with regards to their goals and what they want to be successful as, but what's after that?
Right.
What's the next step? Like, what's the bigger purpose to them, and what's the bigger contribution to their fellow man or woman? Right.
And so talk about this concept of this contribution, because this is interesting. Like, are you talking about like literally
Like the reason you are doing something is there a means to an end?
Is that what
like,
you mean by contribution, or do you
Yeah.
mean giving back?
Giving back.
And you're saying
back,
is that like a? Are you touching on the point that, like, you know, when you give back, that brings the self up? Or
Yeah.
that
So
kind
it
of
gives you a
feeling?
higher purpose outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to just
Me,
like me, and this is all for me. Because when you get to the end of that road, you look back and you go, okay, I've got what I want. Let's use this for example. I've got the house, I've got the cars, I've got the family, I've got this, that, and the other. And then I think you can also look at it when you have kids, for example. That's contribution. You're contributing to them, but that's within society. That's sort of just a given. Like, okay, well, I've got to have kids and I've got to do this, that, and the other. But going outside of that, something that is more meaningful to you, and giving back from all the things that you've achieved, I think that's going to help you ensure that you don't come to that state of depression.
But you know what is a big thing as well? It's like we talk about how past generations maybe didn't have the opportunity to talk about mental health. Maybe there was it the fact that mental health wasn't as prevalent, or was it the fact that it wasn't manifested so clearly because we weren't giving it a platform to be spoken about? Or has it, as with social media and, you know, the access to information and things have just become so much easier to attain, that depression rises with that increase?
I think specifically for men, I think it was considered soft back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that definitely was. I think that we've probably gone to a point, and again, just purely my opinion, where we've gone from like maybe
One
back in
extreme
the
to
day
another.
under diagnosis of stuff like that, to maybe a point now where we sometimes overdo it. And like, I mean, yeah, so I think that specifically for, like, you know, when you think about men, like I think, you know, back in the day there wasn't those opinion leaders in social media, whatever. There wasn't those male opinion leaders that would come out and say, hey, it's okay to talk about your feelings and your issues and your problems, and it's okay to ask for help and that sort of stuff. Whereas now that's very prevalent. Like, I don't really think that many I think it would still happen. Like, but I think that it's a lot easier now for, you know, a male in particular
To feel comfortable.
to feel comfortable to say, like, hey, I'm not doing great.
But where do you think that comes from, though, in terms of us or men, okay, specifically talking about men not speaking up? Is that something that we're hardwired not to do? Is it something that's happened in history? Because I tend to think that, and I could be way off the mark here, but I tend to think that back in the day through war, you know, men, majority of the time well, mostly men, if all men going to war, World War II, World War I, you know, going back to the days of past, you know, coming back and not wanting to talk about what they saw.
Yeah, totally.
Not wanting to talk about
that's an interesting perspective,
you know, what they experienced or having to kill another man or whatever it may be. So coming back into a society where they don't want to talk about those things that they've seen post, what is it called? When you have PTSD, where again, back then there's probably was no PTSD. And coming back into a society where you'll just get on with it.
You know what?
You have to be the father. You have to be a husband.
Yeah,
you have to be,
that's the thing. You just kind of got to, like, at the end of the day, those people, as much as they would have been going through those mental battles that they did, they had to come back and they were like, well, I've got a responsibility here, and they kind of taped their mouth shut and got on with the job.
Yeah. And
but again, that's probably the wrong thing to do as well. Do you know what I mean? It's such a hard thing to unpack. There's like that because they came back, and I know that PTSD was still very prolific at those times as well. Yeah, probably not as like I said
imagine
before.
going and killing another man.
Fuck.
Bro,
or lying around with dead men.
Yeah, dead bodies around.
And then again, we talk about depression now, and people say that sort of thing, like, oh, well, back in the day, but you can't really compare, right? But, you know, you think about these things that those men did go through, but that's why I go to that comparison where I'm like, okay, well, they went through that. Did they just block that off and go, well, I do not want to talk about that? And then that was passed down through generation to generation. It just became the norm. Again, that's sort of something I've thought about.
When we talk about depression, it's like there's two avenues. It's like, is depression always a byproduct of an experience? But some people it's inherent. They just have what we talked about before, clinical depression, where it's just like there's a
maybe they've
imbalance in their brain.
The dopamine receptor, they just operate differently. Yeah, there's actually a chemical imbalance. I know what you mean. That's interesting.
My dad had depression, bro, for a long time, like probably like 6-7 years. But he always suffered from bipolar. Was never diagnosed, but he always just like he used to love buying things, bro. Like, and it's one of the common traits of having bipolar. Specific type of bipolar is erratic spending, mood fluctuations, up and down, depending on, you know, it could be just like a imbalance in your brain, or also could be like, for him, he was in real estate, it was making sale, not making sale, making sale, not making sale. It was on a high, it was on a low. There was never any stability emotionally, financially. There was never any stability. And I think that's like probably one of the big highlights of someone who has a strong or like a hold on their mental health is stability, because I know people who go through emotional highs and then emotional lows, and they never at just a consistent like I'm feeling pretty good. It's either reliant on like, you know, external dopamine sources or needing to train every second of every day. Not to say that training and eating well, I think a lot of people that give too much credit to their mental health, we talk about it a lot, is like, well, okay, and it's not to say that this is going to cure everything, but it'll give you the best chance at success. Eating well, training, getting sunlight, eating non-processed food.
Well, I'll tell you a story about one of my clients that I had, and this was a number of years ago when I was PTing. I had another client that brought this client along, right? And he was telling me that when they would go to, and this was very similar to my mum, I guess, when they would go to her house, she would ask everybody to come, come, we're going to have dinner, and they would get there and the dinner was half cooked and she was in bed, right? She had depression.
Oh, damn.
So they would have to help cook this meal for her, and so on and so forth, right? And this would happen quite often. So he introduced her to me, brought her in, we started training. Over the time, we ended up losing 20 kilos, and she had, I think it was 4 or 5 tablets she needed to take for depression each day. I think it was 4 or 5.
Wow.
And over the course of the year, she lost 20 kilos. She was in an environment now where there was a lot of community, a lot of people obviously bringing her into this community, and she actually stopped taking those tablets after about 6 months. And then beyond that, she didn't have depression anymore. And that was on the back of us working on her exercise, her nutrition, and then I think it was also being among people where, that were all about moving forward and progressing and that sort of stuff like that. So again, like you say, like, exercise and nutrition.
It's not the be all and end all.
It's not the be all and end all, but it's a great.
But it's crazy.
That's
the amount
amazing,
of,
bro.
It's crazy the amount of people. Yeah. Like, you go on again. I don't know all the cases out there, but whenever I've seen, find me someone who's like started getting into training and exercise and eating healthy. I can't even think of
haven't stayed in the same mental.
that haven't stayed in that same. Yeah. Like, why is it? Do you think that has such a huge impact I mean, it must be obviously chemical as well. Like
Self-image,
self-image,
chemicals in your brain.
the dopamine from
but
literally
it's
exercise.
endorphins, dopamine, 100%.
Like it's crazy how much of an impact that stuff has when people start doing it, and how much better they feel. They talk better. Do you know, like anyone.
Yeah,
even I see it
better,
changing. Like, and again, like Marcus was always fine.
Bro, look
My
at Tom
cousin-
Donaldson, bro. How much weight did he lose, bro? 90 kilos plus.
Yeah, he
bro.
lost a
And
lot
I
of
know
weight.
he's in a much better mental health than he was before when he wasn't, bro.
Bro, he just signed up for the Western Games, dude.
Yeah,
What
I
a
saw
gun.
that.
Bro,
and
shout out Tommy, bro. You're a legend.
Makes you think like how much of this stuff is. Sorry, I use the word superficial lightly because what I'm saying is how much of this stuff is actually way less deep than we think it is. Do you know what I mean?
Probably a good amount.
Not all the time. Yeah, I know that there's exceptions and there's plenty of people that it's inherent or whatever, it's chemical. But like, how much of this stuff is actually related to the stuff that you're doing, your practices, and But
your language as well. Like
your lay, yeah, exactly right.
If you sit there saying to yourself over and over again that I'm depressed, that I'm anxious, that I'm stressed, over and over again, that's going to be your belief.
Yeah,
you're going to sink into this and believe it. And I'm not suggesting that everybody just, and again, I don't know, like whether it's chemical or whether it's depressed, but it's very easy to be able to say that because it's so accepting.
Yeah.
Oh, are you depressed? Yeah, I'm depressed. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
bro.
You're that depressed person.
Yes, that's
like,
right.
it's
You
like that.
you
It's
acknowledge
instant.
that's part of
Yeah,
you.
but again, we do acknowledge that people do have depression.
No, that's not. We're not saying
that you don't.
I don't think a lot of people.
We
would,
do have to go
I think
down
a lot of
that.
people
a
would
lot of
agree.
people would identify with what we're saying. Like again, like because
But
the
let's
thing
just-
is, we would even. I mentioned it talking to Marcus this morning, and he was saying like I think that the other thing is we use those terms very loosely a lot of time. Like I'll be
I'm
having
depressed.
a shit day. I'm like, bro, I'm so depressed.
Yeah,
and
that's right,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And that sort of. And then what you realize is, I was talking to Marcus about it, and we're like, we talk about how like fuck, this or winter or whatever, and then we're like, let's just say it's winter. You lose your job. Something really bad happens with your wife or your family. That's a series of unfortunate events.
Correct. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you know what I mean? And I guess when I look at stuff like that, I think to myself, okay, well, at what point does that spiral literally into depression? Because I'm sure that's how it starts. It starts with a series of unfortunate events. It starts with a huge amount of weight gain. It starts with a bad breakup.
A death of a family
and then
member.
at some point it spirals for so long and so hard that it actually becomes
In a whirlwind of depression.
it actually becomes, and that maybe that chemical imbalance or whatever it is actually remains. Like,
because what do they say? Like, what is the feeling like? It's like someone sitting on your chest or something. Like I don't know.
That feeling of depression?
Like what does it
You
actually
sunken?
feel
That anxiety
like?
feeling
Like you can't
and shit.
breathe
Yeah,
or you just can't do anything. I don't know.
it's like
It's helplessness,
It's like
bro.
it's almost like
Helplessness,
panic.
yeah.
It's almost like a panic feeling.
But there's
as well.
so many like different subcategories of depression. We're talking about depression from a certain event which is what you're talking about, and then it slowly starts to manifest into something deeper and deeper and deeper. Maybe another unfortunate event, and then you start to put on weight, and all these things just start up pack on top of each other.
Yeah.
Then you've got, and I just want to like steer away from that for a second. Steer away from those I guess from those events. But then there are certain things, like now we're talking about like the generation that we live in, that cause depression to be so much more prevalent. So like, bro, look at the ways in which we get quick fixes of dopamine.
Bro.
Yeah.
Vaping, bro. Like I've struggled with vaping. Like if I don't buy them, but if I have a puff, like it's just, that's a quick way of getting some sort of thing. You see that little colored thing, you just want to reach it, you want to grab it, you want to puff on it. Quick fixes of food, bro. Fucking McDonald's.
Yeah, that's that dopamine.
Bro, scrolling.
Bro,
Yeah,
scrolling, endless scrolling.
Bro, but
People
why do
say,
you-
I don't know why I'm depressed.
But bro,
because you're sitting for hours
Guess
and
what?
hours on
After you
end.
scroll for hours, how do you feel after you get off your phone? You feel like shit.
Terrible.
You throw your phone down. You're like, that was disgusting. Like you
Yeah.
actually feel like shit.
But it's a relentless cycle, bro. People are living in this relentless cycle. And I just I don't want to go into conspiracy theory, whatever it is, but it's not conspiracy theory. We talk about big pharmaceutical companies. So they feed us foods that are bioengineered. They feed us foods that are made in labs. They're pushing this whole vegan agenda with you can go to get vegan butchers right now, and in each of the meats there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ingredients in one
Oh,
product.
you can get it at Woolies. You can get
go to
the
Woolies.
meat, the fake, not real meat or
And
whatever.
all these
Yeah.
big, large companies are all owned by the two biggest companies, Vanguard and BlackRock.
BlackRock, yeah.
And if you look at this, is
The private equity.
Private equity
So
companies.
Vanguard and BlackRock are two massive private equity,
Yeah.
multi-billion-dollar
and they have their
They're running
hands in
everything.
every industry, whether it be food production, big pharmaceutical companies. So they're giving you all these Netflix, they're giving you all these cheap sources to attain like a good feeling for a short amount of time that'll spike your dopamine, and then you fall into depression. And then they're the same group that comes and gives you, the
meds.
meds to go
medication.
fix it. And if you look on these
Interesting.
fucking medications, it says antidepressant, no, may or may not cause even further depression or severe depression. I know a lot of people. My brother was on his depression, but he threw all those meds out and he's breaking free of that. Thank God.
Yeah.
But bro, like a lot of people
Slippery
that are,
slope,
bro,
big
it's a
time.
slippery slope because it gives you that like super spike and then you crash again. Super spike and a lot of people you can't
up
eat on
and
them, bro. It's messed up, man. So
yeah, there's this little video that was on social media a little while ago, and it's like, this is what it's like addiction, right? Again, we're sort of going into a different direction here, but it's a little Kiwi that goes on this little run. Have you seen that?
Is this the one with the cartoons?
Yeah, the cartoon.
And then they're all on their, you know, talking about the one they're all on their phone. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. And there's this little yellow dot, and he sort of pokes at it with his beak, and then he sucks it up, and then he gets into this like trance,
super high state,
and he like floats in the air, and he smacks onto the ground, and he's like bounces on the ground, and he's like, okay, back to normal, and he runs again, just keeps running, and then there's a little dot again. So this dot just represents anything, right?
Yeah.
And he sucks it up again, and he goes floating in the air, and you know, so it just goes around this little circle, and at the end of it, everything goes dark. He's in this depressive state. And that could be one way that people lead into that as well, from what you've just said. Like they scroll through social media, for example, and they see things that they wish they want, but they can just never attain or never get. So, you know, looking at, and this is something that I was going to say before, but I've got a book that I read called Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman. I want to say this before I forget, but Learned Optimism is about, what I got from it was, does pessimism, pessimistic thinking lead to depression? Or if you're depressed, you have pessimistic thoughts.
Interesting.
Right?
Very interesting. So say that again for the people, because I love that.
Yeah, so it's, are you a pessimistic person or do you have pessimistic views? If you do, does that lead to depression? Or does having depression lead to pessimistic thoughts?
Bro, what a great
So Martin
discussion.
Seligman is the...
what does he argue?
The father of positive psychology.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's the whole. That's what he questioned. Now it's a great book. Like if anybody has depression or is going through anything like that, Learned Optimism.
What's the synopsis?
Martin
Give us
Seligman.
the general synopsis of the book.
Well, that's what it is.
What does he argue? Does he argue both sides, or does he focus on one?
Pessimistic to depression.
So he thinks pessimistic thoughts
lead to depression.
Yeah.
Lead to depression.
Yeah.
They spiral into it versus like...
He doesn't say like, yeah, this
black
is
and
it,
white, right?
But yeah,
Is he a
that's what I believe as well.
psychologist?
Psychologist, yeah. So look up positive psychology.
Yeah, bro,
He's a father of positive psychology, and the book's really good because it gives you things that you can actually do. So it has like questionnaires and those sorts of things that you can do to help you if you are in that sort of mind frame. But the thing about that as well, like, you know, when people talk about, when a psychologist or life coaches, when they talk about doing things to help you through a depressive state, what's the percentage of people that actually go and do these things?
Yeah.
Are they so helpless that they don't actually want to go and do it? Or is it because depression's so hard, it's so hard to break away from that to go and actually seek the help? And with regards to depression now and just mental health now, we talk a lot about make sure you talk. Like if you feel something, say something.
Speak, yeah.
And look, I like that. I think that's good. But when you're in that state, you don't want to talk. I think that people on the other side need to get better at asking questions.
Yeah.
So if you're having a conversation with your mate, for example, and you go through like ALF, ask, listen, formulate, like ask a question, listen, formulate a response. So let's say me and Matty go to the footy, or we go to the pub, we're about to watch the footy game, and I'm like, hey bro, how's your day going? And he's like, oh, it's pretty shit. Anyway, the game's starting. And I go, yeah bro, sweet. And then instead of that, like, oh, hey Matty, like, bro, what happened? Like, what went on in your day today? Like, I really want to know. Oh, nah, this happened. Hey, how about we go get a feed over here? Don't worry about the game. We'll watch second half.
Right.
Let's go have a chat about what went on with your day, right? As opposed to me going, oh, well, I actually don't want to bring that up with you. Let's actually just watch the footy.
Yeah.
So I'm big on like, let's talk
Dig
about it.
bit.
Matty, open up. If you have anything that you need, open
Thanks,
up.
bro.
But does Matty really want to open up? Does Matty really want to talk about it?
That's the last thing he probably wants to do.
100%. So that's what I mean about like
the way in which you do it.
From a friendship standpoint, from a family standpoint, like, could you be the one to open up a bit more to them and say, hey, look, I really want to understand what's going on? Because we say those things every now and then. Oh, work was shit. Oh, yeah, how's you and your missus? Oh, yeah, it's all right. And we don't pick up on those things where we might not be we might not have the confidence enough to have those conversations with those people. But if we consistently say all the time, like, speak up, and then Maddie comes to me and goes, oh, I want to talk about something. I'm like, yeah, bro. Oh, sweet. Yeah, no, sorry, I got to go. Like, you know,
and you know,
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And you know what? I mean, even when I've, you know, and everyone gets in those states, right? Yeah. Even when I'm in those states, I think to myself, man, I don't even want to fucking talk about it. I just want to feel better. It's almost like recognizing that the people around you aren't feeling the best and thinking, what's going to make them feel better? Like, what do I know? What do I know about them that we can go and, like, maybe it's fucking, we go play tennis together, or maybe we go train, or maybe we go to the cafe and go have lunch, you know, and just talk shit, and
but
then
these
stuff
sometimes,
just comes
bro,
out,
that's what
know?
I mean, though, that because you can go have a conversation, but they can be a superficial conversation.
Superficial.
It could just be like, oh, you're not feeling good? Oh, well, let's go to the
Let's go
cafe
do
and
something.
have a laugh. But still inside, that person's still feeling
That's
like,
what I'm saying, bro.
I mean?
Like, I feel like a lot of these things, I feel like depression as well. Like, I'm not in all times, but I feel like in my opinion, in the majority of cases, it's a spiritual thing, bro. Like, it's not, because we're physical bodies, but we're living a spiritual experience. You know what I mean? It's not just we're these sacks of meats and then we go into the dirt and then we just die and things.
Did you say sacks of meat?
Sacks of meat. That's what we were, just sacks of meat on this big planet that's just rolling around the universe, bro. Like, I think in order to break through from those depression and those mental health barriers and, you know, these things that we affirm in our lives, is because a lot of people don't feel that they have a purpose, and they're not purpose driven. And me personally, like, obviously, you know, we talk about my faith a lot, and I try not to steer in that direction too much, but I can't help myself in that direction because it's become such an innate part of my life. It's become where my spirit is calling myself to go back home, because I feel at home as a child of God, in part of this spiritual family. I know a lot of people that steer away from that because they're very, like, logic and reason based. You know what I mean? They need these facts and figures. But I was watching this thing on Instagram today, and it was hilarious. It's like people that say, like, the Big Bang Theory, right? And they're like, miracles don't exist, and we can explain everything if you just grant the one miracle, which is the Big Bang Theory. So these science-based people that are providing all these facts and figures, but, like, their whole premise and their whole arguments is based on, like, one miracle in itself, which is the Big Bang Theory. JP, you good, bro?
No, I can hear the heater in the background of the...
Oh, true.
Yeah, true. Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, bro, like, I think...
It's the washing machine, bro.
Yeah.
So just JP just washing his undies.
Yeah.
Close the door.
Yeah, no, cheers, bro. But yeah, it's an interesting point, bro. Like, I just feel like in that aspect, I think it's a spiritual thing, and I think a lot of people right now are dealing with, you know, these thoughts and feelings, but your soul and your mind, they can deceive you sometimes. You know what I mean? They can trick you into a certain way of thinking.
Bro, do you know that in order for you to... Do either of you know much about Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes, I do.
Do you know that it's literally a requirement for you to believe in a higher being, to believe in some sort of spiritual high being for you to be a part of the program? Otherwise,
it started as a Christian program, and then they veered into, like, spirituality in general.
Otherwise, you cannot participate. And, like, again, I'm not. The reason I'm making that correlation is because a lot of these people that go to AA are in a bad place where they might be dealing with anxiety, depression, and the way they deal with it is maybe through alcohol, etc. So, look, and, you know, I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast before about this whole, you know, people are, you know, I feel like there has been this movement towards spirituality and a consciousness of it, maybe not necessarily in the direction of, oh, let's talk about God and a higher being, or talk about high being, but through, you know, yoga or Pilates, whatever, you know, just that, that spirituality, anything to basically not say that it's God.
Yeah, literally. Yeah,
so what is it that you like? So you sort of said a higher power for you in terms of not leaning into depression or anxiety, or so what was it for you? Yeah, what is it for you guys? Like, how do you steer away from being in a depressive state or being anxious? Again, like, I can't really correlate between how you get depression because I've never had it before. But what is it that you sort of look to? I mean, again, you. I'll touch base. So I'm going to use Bible scripture here. So it says, but even before, when you're younger, like before
I found that.
Yeah, even before that.
Because when I was younger,
I wasn't able to break through.
Not a problem in the world.
Yeah, guys, let's go out. Let's do this.
Sweet.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, not going into a depressive state.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
You as an individual, you as a person, like, what is it? Is it because, you know, the way you grew up? Is it how you were brought up by your parents? Is it...
I think, like, the first, like, challenge that came to me was when I had turned 18 and I started going out, and I was like so keen because my brothers were 7 years and 5 years older. Couldn't wait to go clubbing, and I remember went clubbing on my 18th birthday. I went, like, booked a table with the Ivy, had a drinks and you know, the bottles and this and that, and then slowly after, like, a year, or not even, like like 6 months, 6 to 12 months, that became so boring. And I was like, is this what these people do? Like 25 years old, you're still out popping bottles in the club, you know what I mean? Going out, having like doing like this, all this superficial shit. And then turned 19, turned 20, and it became like the same. We just go to the pub, hang out with the boys, you know what I mean? Like smoke bud, like just do this irrelevant stuff. And I still wasn't getting any like satisfaction from that. I would just go home, no fulfillment whatsoever. I opened the business really young, like when I was 21, like I said. And I think that 2 years of being away from my friendship group and just having to turn up to work every day, 6 days a week, like hustling.
Having a sole purpose, having a vision, and
seeing that come to life was very fulfilling. But even then, like, I sold my business, and then that started to dwindle, and I wasn't able to then reside. So like this question that was always there is like, who am I, and like why am I put on this earth? Like, what is my greater purpose? And I think that's such a common thing that a lot of people like ask about.
Talk about that then. So when Brother Bear, when Brother Bear stopped, what was that transition like?
Bro,
where were you mentally?
Bro, very difficult. Very difficult. Yeah, but I sold it in December, and it was like after 2.5 years of like showing up every single day, and like I had purpose there because a lot of people not only relied on us for obviously food and coffee, but man, we had so many talks. The same way we're talking here,
you
the
just
same way
kind of had to show up.
Had to show up, bro. Put a smile on my face. Even though, bro, some days I'd hide behind the counter, and my brother would be like, "Come on, bro, like get up." And I'm like, "Nah, bro, I can't be bothered doing this today." But yeah, bro, like it tested my mental health in that. But essentially, it was always purpose driven because I knew I was helping people in the community who came to my shop because they were not in a good mental health. Bro, during lockdown, mental health was at all-time low, bro. Driving around, couldn't do anything. How mental health went through the roof,
bro. I had to FaceTime people like 8 times a day, bro.
I had to teach like 20 students online, and they had to do like exercises on
literally
online.
And that's what, even during that time, like I got fulfillment then because coming to work was like, oh, this is mad. Like I get to socialize, and bro, like that was
because we could, right? Yeah,
right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You were cheering at that point.
But after it sold, bro, like I like to say that I'm generally in quite a good mood. But even the word mood, like, because happiness comes and goes, it's circumstantial. It comes and goes. But that fulfillment, that peace, that love, that joy,
that inner joy,
that inner joy. These are spiritual promises that are promised in the Bible according to His will. So I just feel like these, temporary emotions that we can feel of happiness, of sadness, like up, down, but there's not that consistent. How would you call it?
I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what people do. They always try to find happiness. They always want to get to happiness and they want to stay in happiness. But happiness is a two-edged sword. It's happiness and sadness.
100%.
Like somebody dies, you're sad. Somebody's born, you're happy. Like there's always opposite, right? You open a business, happy. Your business
have a bad
closes,
day.
Sad, right?
Well, what's the happiest or most joyful you've ever felt in your life?
I'm generally a happy person.
I know you are. But is there any event or something that happened where you were just like, an emotional high, like you could have cried, you were that happy or that fulfilled or something like that in your life? Any experience? I'm just trying to get a bit more of a gauge on who Sean is.
Yeah, like sort of opening it up here, like I'm generally a very happy person, and this is what I was getting to, like what makes, for me, like how come I've never had depression before? How come I don't hardly ever have anxiety? Why is it that I hardly ever stress? And it comes back to, I guess, resilience of what I went through when I was a child. But also, I sort of have a mentality, and whether this is good or not, I don't know. I have this mentality in my head, and I don't say it a lot, but if I don't die, why would I complain? Like if I'm not in a situation where I'm going to die, like why would I complain? So everything that I go through, every situation, whether it's riding off a car. I'll tell you a quick story. Was out drinking, so 10 years ago, was out drinking, went to my mate's house, we were drinking there, got into a fight with my mate, 8 o'clock in the morning, I drove home from Bankstown to Macquarie Field, and I was drunk, and I was driving on, about to turn right at the Holdsworth Army Base, and about maybe 50 meters from the turnoff is the Army base there with the gates. I fell asleep. I went past the turnoff, and just before I hit the fence, I woke up and I broke and I smashed into the front gate.
The army
you fucking
base.
smashed into the army fence
Into
gate.
the army base fence.
Oh my god!
This was
any alarms going off?
Nah,
any bombers coming?
There wasn't any like. It wasn't like one of those. People? It was just a fence.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So anyway, after that, like I took the car home and it was all wrecked.
No one saw you.
Maybe. No one saw me. No, it was Sunday morning. It was first thing Sunday morning. So anyway, I got home and then I looked at it and I was like, number one, I'm fine. Number two, I didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
And number 3, that's it. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
no
okay,
worries. You know, if my car is going to be unroadworthy, I can just catch a bus to work, whatever it may be, right? There's these events in my life wherever they happen, as long as I don't hurt anybody, as long as I'm fine, like, you know, I just don't see the point in worrying about those things.
And I think that's really good, because like a lot of people would get into a circumstance like that and they'd start getting very existential. Like, what's going on with my... But I also think on the flip side of that, when that happens to certain people, it can be a wake up call to say,
100%.
Okay, I need to make some changes here because I almost died. I crashed into an army base or what.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
So like, in making the change to your life, 100%. And again, like you know, you guys see me in the mornings, like, you know, I'm generally very happy.
Bro,
but I don't want to say like, if you have depression, you get to choose whether you have it or not. I'm not saying that.
No,
but
you're not saying that.
Like, I choose not to be stressed. I choose not to have anxiety. I choose not to go down that path.
Or at least reside in it and associate with it.
And again, I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that people can just decide not to be depressed.
No.
Obviously not. But you know, for me, I exercise, I eat good food, and I choose to be surrounded by people that, you know, that align with my values and so on and so forth. So I think there's things that you can do to move towards it. And there was a book called Tribal Leadership. I think I talked about this before, where they had the 5 levels of where people are at within their lives. Number 1, you are somebody that's pessimistic, that you look at life as in like, you know, the reason why my life is this way is because the stars, the moon, the earth, the world, the system, right? Number 2 is, it's like, you know, the government, it's people, it's my family, it's my friends.
Yeah.
And then the levels get higher, and as you get higher with the levels, it's more about being with people. And the 5th level, I'll skip the other ones, but the 5th level is like, you know, I'm in with my values, my beliefs, I'm contributing, you know, I'm in a higher power, or so on and so forth. And what they say within the book is, if you are somebody that is in that lower rank, like 1 or 2, you need to get with somebody in those higher ranks, like somebody that has, you know,
someone's living differently. Like,
somebody that's trying to look for success, trying to contribute, trying to, you know, who is happy or fulfilled, and then be with those people. And I think you find that, like you said, within the gym environment, that's somewhere that you can get that, or any type of environment where you have people that are trying to work towards being better themselves. So
you just made me think of a really nice quote that I've seen, which is, stay close to the people who feel like sunshine. You know? And like, I think that you make an interesting point there about being around those people like that. And I think that, you know, we can, you know, talking about choosing to be happy and all that sort of stuff is really, really important. And I firmly believe in that. And I think, I think for a lot of people, like even people listening, they might be thinking to themselves, like, what are those actual things that I can do? And I think that, like you said, you know, things like, you know, eating well, things like exercising, whatever. Maybe even those things are out of reach.
It's just looking after yourself.
Looking after yourself, but like, being around,
to a
like,
bare minimum.
Like,
it's just,
what about people don't talk enough about humor. People don't talk about. When I think about the times that, and like, I mean, I get that all the time. Like, you know, we get that at the gym. We have a, you know, pop out of the hut, fucking.
Half the reason I go there in the morning.
90% of the time I go there or started going there was because of that. Is for the camaraderie, for the laughs and that sort of stuff. When I think about the, you know, growing up and why and this is the first thing that comes to mind. Growing up, why I always felt so happy is because when I was always happy, having a laugh, talking shit with my cousins. We always hung around together and we were pissing ourselves 90% of the time. And that is just how I remember aside from my early childhood. And like, you know, I obviously I'm fortunate that I come from a background where I've had a lot of love from my family and my parents, and I've got a very tight-knit family unit. You know, and I know a lot of people aren't necessarily fortunate to have that, but, you know, a lot of people, you know, maybe a lot of the time don't put enough emphasis on who am I spending my time with? Yeah. Like you said, like who am I hanging around? What are those people like? And how are they contributing to my own state? And we've all seen people, maybe we are one of those people that have moved away from certain groups or detach themselves from certain people because of the way that they make you feel or the way that they make you...
or the things they do, the things they engage with, the way they talk, gossiping, all these things.
But ultimately, those things always have an impact on... They always just do your head in, don't they? It's always about what it's doing to do your head in. You're thinking, you're overthinking, you can't necessarily feel...
It's not a natural state of being.
Exactly right. Exactly.
But also I want to touch on as well, like when you talk about being with people and going back to how this potential depression comes on or anxiety comes on, and again, we've talked about this before in other podcasts, coming back to your childhood, traumas of your childhood, and all those sorts of things like that. And again, I think about myself in terms of what I went through in my childhood, and again, how come I am not in a depressive state because of what I saw and what I went through. Like, obviously my mum moved away to a different country, so I didn't really have, I had my father who was a single parent, but then it's like, and when you talk to people, because as a PT, you meet people who have depression and anxiety and stress and those types of things, and you're like, how can I give you what I have?
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to like really go, well, these are the steps that you need to do. This is what you have, and you don't even really know yourself, do you? Like, if you don't have those depressive thoughts or anxiety, and that's what I found quite hard as a PT, because I would be teaching and this is why I moved away from that and did mindset coaching and did my diploma in coaching, because I was like, man, like, yeah, it's great that we're exercising, it's great that we're doing nutrition, but there's something a little bit deeper than that. There's something a little bit deeper that we need to go through from a mindset standpoint to be able to not only do it long term, but to actually find out what's going on within your mental health space. And with the fitness community, it's prevalent now. Like, there's a lot of gyms and those sorts of places talk about mental health. And we used to get psychologists into our gym to speak to clients about that, because they do definitely go hand in hand. So it was quite hard in that environment to be able to go, okay, well, these are the things that you need to do to be able to move forward and progress. But again, it's such a big and broad topic.
Yeah, thanks for shedding so much light on that. That's really good. But just because I know I'm not putting it on you or anything, but like, do you believe in a higher power or a God?
Yeah, I do.
You do.
Yeah,
you do. That's good. That's a good, like, I feel like jumping off point, because I feel like a lot of people kind of get to a point where they're trying, and they just they've gotten to the end of themselves. And I think a lot of the time the breakthrough comes when and that it doesn't have to be any form, or I'm not talking about any type of religion or any type of specific spirituality, but they get to this point of surrender where they're like, this is beyond my control.
You have to be at the point where you're fucking helpless.
Yeah,
you have to be at the point where you're literally on your knees and you have to be crying. You have to be like, I don't know what else. And I feel like, again, I don't know. You probably know more people that have had that kind of literally come to Jesus moment,
big time, or just the end of themselves.
And I feel like a lot, like, at the end of the day, I mean, I say this in sales, let alone in spiritual life.
Yeah,
but, people, they make changes on pain. They make changes on troubles, on helplessness, on exhaustion, on just
that's a real problem.
Fucked, So I mean, again, the big thing for me, but again, look, I think it's more than that as well, though. And I don't know what your opinion on this is, but for example, I think that there has to be, like, I guess in the same way that in religion you talk about faith and works, you have to. I feel like do the work. You've got to put in the... Correct.
It says that. It says faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can't be like, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I believe or whatever. I believe in a higher power and all my problems have gone away, what have you. So
yeah. But that's the thing as well, like when you say you have to do the work, like if you are in those states, you have to seek out the help, but you have to do the work. Like
100%. And that's what you were touching on earlier. It's like, you're not saying that we can't, there's not some people that are really dealing with it, and you can't just flick a switch and it's on off, or like, I'm not depressed or I am depressed. However, there is that. It does require you to take that step and then to take that next step and just to get a little bit of momentum, because a lot of people that have been stuck in that world into depression, I know, like when my dad was in it, bro, like it was, like you said, similar to your mum, 6-7 years of just being in fucking bed. And it's just not a way to live, bro. Literally, my mum used to get in there, and by the end, she had grown a lot of resentment towards him. It was just like, get up, you stunned mullet. Like, you're literally just sitting in bed. And it's a really bad place to be in. And I think a lot of my drive now to not fall into that is the fact that I've seen like how much it robs not only from the person but the people around you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if like seeing my mum like that, sort of that unconsciously, I'm like, well, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know. Maybe,
I think a big part of it probably is, bro. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we're talking about like certain wake up calls that come, bro. It took mine had like we talked about this in a relationship. It took him getting shot in the head for him to be given a second chance. And I know that sounds so fucked up, but how can I not believe in miracles and second chances when, you know what I mean, you get popped in the head and you're still alive to tell the story, and now he's made a complete change.
Perspective.
He's got a completely different perspective of the world he lives in. He's just grateful more. He's more present. He's alive. Which is number one.
I mean, gee, that's even something that you don't experience until you've experienced it.
Talk about mental health.
Potentially, potentially seeing the end of your life and
you're like he hasn't got a breath. He's not got a mental.
But a lot of people, bro, that like I feel like come up on the other side of that.
Yeah.
You know, the trauma can go two ways. It can come through as a breakthrough, or it can go like I'm just back in a tunnel.
But you know what we should do? Like we're looking at having guests on very soon, but we should have somebody that has experienced depression.
Yeah, man.
And come out on the other side.
So we can get an understanding.
I can even get my mate on who has a master's in psych just to get his perspective.
I
on
love
it.
that.
Can I just one last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, which we touched on before we finish up, is I've always found personally in my life, for better or for worse, because some might say that this is like, you know, maybe it is superficial or shouldn't be the way that it happens. You two, right?
Yeah, no, we're just marking it because you sound like you're about to say something pretty important. Go on.
We're supposed to do that the whole episode.
Oh shit, that's good. I didn't even know you could do.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could
Tell
do
your
that.
story, bro.
But we
No,
keep
what I was
forgetting.
going to say,
Go.
I've just found it in times of my life when I have feel like I've been, or when I feel like, you know, when I think about periods of happiness or periods of joy or periods of just elation in my life, I've always felt that at those times I've drawn a strong sense of identity or self-worth from specific things in my life. Like, again, this might be, you know, some might consider this not the best thing to do, but I've always thought about, you know, for example, you know, if career is going really well, I'm feeling really good because there's a specific, you know, thing going on in career, and maybe at the same time, you know, my relationship's going well, or, you know, maybe I'm, you know, for example, now, you know, I would say that if I was to look at this period of my life and why, you know, maybe this is a good period of my life, I think to myself, you know, I'm a year into marriage, my wife and I are doing great. I'm going to the gym, I'm training, I'm in the best shape I've ever been, and I feel the best. So I've always felt like a sense of pride in those elements in my life, even when I'm like maybe even talking about them with people or with people. It's almost like I have a few flags that I can plant.
Yeah.
A few, like I've planted my flag in a few things, and I draw a sense of self-worth, confidence, and pride and self-esteem from those things.
Right.
And as much as that might seem superficial, I do think that stuff like that is important. I feel like people need to have a sense of, I guess, pride in those things. And I'm drawing that relationship because I feel like always at, you know, points in my life, whenever I think about great things or great periods in my life, I've always been able to draw a sense of self-esteem, self-worth, and identity from things. And as much as we
Like your career, like your
the
family.
career, like my family, like my health and fitness, you know, at this point. You know,
But can
for
I just say,
example.
bro, like, and I love that, and it's so true, bro, because I do that either consciously or subconsciously as well.
I think everyone,
and I
yeah.
think a lot of people do. I think you do as well, Shawnee. You know, you eat well, you train, you've got all these things that you should be proud of, and you should, bro. Like, it's amazing. Same as you. But my perspective is like, aren't these things all temporary? We're going to wake up one day where we don't have those family members around, where we don't have that health that we've relied on, where we don't have that career that we've been so
That's true.
well established in.
And then what?
And then what? And then what it is? Do you know what I mean? These things are so
Just-
temporary. I think perspective, especially in terms of mental health, speaking to people in their 70 years plus, and a lot of people that aren't grounded in some form of faith, I feel like, well, what have they got to live for?
But
Especially
also,
now.
But also look at, like, for me, and I have this on my whiteboard at home, like values. Like, what are my values and what are my true values, and am I living through those values? Like, what are the top 5 things that are most important to me, and am I living within those values? And then also my strengths as well. Like, looking at what are my strengths and where can I contribute within society, and living through those too. So, as much as I'm saying like, oh, I'm a resilient person and from this and that, and I'm just a happy person, whatever, I always go back to my values.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I value, and am I actively living through that, and what are my rules around my values? For example, health is my number 1 value. Number 1, above everything.
Is it?
Number 1.
No, I'm joking.
Health.
Obviously, I know that.
Yeah, above everything. And I have these rules around it. I must train this amount of time. I must do this, and then it links into my mental state as well. But again, like I said, like final thoughts, and you guys can have your final thoughts as well.
That's right.
For anybody out there that has, you know, any mental health issues, like I said, Martin Seligman. Okay. Oh.
That's all right.
Learned Optimism. It's a great book. I'll definitely say check it out.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, my closing thoughts as well is exactly very similar to what JP and Shawnee were just saying. I think we've just got a little bit of technical difficulties here, but JP is working on it right now. Thanks, bro. Yeah. No, that's okay. My closing thoughts basically very similar to what you just built off. Definitely get your physical health and your mental health and those things in order through the things that you can control. Yeah. I love what JP touched on, which is, you know, establishing yourselves in things that give you that sense of self-esteem, like your friends and family, your purpose in regards to your career. I'm of the belief, and again, people can agree or disagree, that those things are temporary, those things are fleeting, those things are not going to be with you, and they're blessings that you're lucky to even have in the first place.
Yeah.
If you're in a position now where you feel like you've gotten to your wits' end, you know, you've tried everything, you've tried eating well, you've tried, you know, finding that perfect career, I believe it's just you're going to come back full circle to a point where you need to surrender. And if you need a relationship with Jesus or God, hit me up. Come to church.
But you're always going to be searching, aren't you, for the perfect job, for the perfect partner.
That's right.
It's cyclical, right?
That's
all the
true,
time.
bro.
But if you focus on yourself, again, like it could be with a higher power,
or with yourself.
could be with your values, could be, you know, if you're focusing on that internal. Good.
Sit down, JP.
On that,
not good.
On that internal drive for you to be the person that you need to be, then I think that's going to help you and keep you in good stead. But that's just from my opinion.
Love
what
that,
I
bro.
do.
That was a good, you know what, man, I love this episode, bro.
Great. That was, man, we need more shit like that. I love that.
Man, I love that. And if you have any stories about your mental health or any special guests you want to see on, this has been episode 13.
Yeah, even if you ask somebody that has experienced depression or you are experiencing depression, or
Feel free
like
to
reach
reach
out.
out.
Like, I mean, if you want to offer an opinion or even like on stuff that we're talking about, like we said, we're just like
it gets us excited as well.
Yeah. Because I'm going to be talking to my mum quite a bit of obviously moving forward and, you know, trying to get a better understanding about it. But
Praise the Lord.
yeah. Easy.
Love that.
All good.
All right, gang.
Is that us?
See you next
Episode
week.
13.
All right. You.